Well, hi, and welcome to another episode of Down to Business. I'm Andrew Beattie, and once again, joining me today is Richard Ford. Our last response, the response we had to our last video on change and fear and anxiety, everything related to some of the situation we found ourselves in recently around COVID. The response was great, to be fair. A lot of people thanked for some of that help. I find it useful. I know Richard does, and with the people he worked with. So the main thing about these videos is that people are getting something out of it. They can add real value to help them within one, their life, but two, their business. So we thought with all that's been going on, and there's been so much change and so much, unknowns around COVID. I think what we've seen the last few weeks with some of the easing of restrictions and less cases coming forward, and I know with a lot of clients I've been speaking to, there is a fair bit more positivity, but a fair bit more hope, and a few more things being known. And we've gone from being in chaos and dealing with that anxiety ourselves to really now getting towards that point of going, well, how do we get back? How do we get ready? How do we make sure we're on the right foot? And we've got our plans in place. So today we thought nothing better than have another chat with Richard with regard to whether you need to change anything and planning for what's coming up and being ready to bounce back. So, Rich, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Hi, and hi, everyone.
I guess, what are some of the things you've been seeing since we last caught up? And as I said, our last video we did was right in the thick of it. What have you been seeing in more recent weeks?
Well, there's been a change in business confidence, so that's one thing. And, the whole question of, what do people do when they come out of it? Is there a need to change, the way you do your business, processes, procedures? What have people learned? They're the main things that I've been picking out with the people that I've been seeing.
Okay, well, I might touch on that point in a minute. Let's talk business confidence. I've mentioned it, business sentiment. We've heard plenty of media reports around it. I know in the conversation I've been having, for the large majority or even the greater majority, there's a lot more confidence there. People are actually looking and saying, well, are we ready? The good thing I've been seeing is a lot of people are really getting into their planning. They're really thinking about what did we do before that maybe we could do better? What didn't we do before that maybe we should adopt? Are there different ways of working, etc.? I'm not saying it's for everyone, but it's a good time to really start to look internally and work out how you can position yourself better for what may be a new world. So, what do you take by business confidence?
Well, I think it's a funny way that we language it, because we talk about business as an entity when really, business is about the people, and, business is about the leaders. And when we talk about business confidence, I think we're actually talking about the confidence of the leaders, the owners, the CEOs, the managers, the supervisors. So I think that the point that I want to just, make or put across is that if the people in business work on their own confidence, that's going to create a big shift. And confidence is a funny thing because, confidence is the end result of things. It's not a thing in itself. So, when we talk about, focus and, deciding on what type of business you want to create, and you get your focus on that, well, that then impacts your confidence. So I think the main issue, the main point around business confidence is work on your own confidence. What do you need to do to get the clarity? What do you need to do to feel sure of yourself, to feel worthy of yourself, to make the choices that you want to make moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's also fair to add to that if the leaders, in this case, many of our viewers are business owners, if they haven't got that confidence, it's not going to resonate down into their team either, which will have other effects on their business.
Yeah, I think that's very accurate, and that's why I think it's important for the business leaders to work on their confidence. And and it's a choice. It's about dealing with your fear and dealing with your anxiousness, as we spoke about last time, and dealing with the doubts that you have. So I think today it's about, giving people some support around how to do that, how to do that moving forward, how to release the fear, the anxiousness, the doubt, and some really simple steps to actually follow to guide them towards the clarity that you're after.
Yeah, I think that's a key point when you say simple. You know me, mate. I'm simple. I like simple steps, but I think part of why we started this blog and this video series, etc., is to give business owners pragmatic solutions that they can apply, rather than having to pay for stuff, etc. But taking years and years of experience from myself, yourself, and other professionals we've had in these forums to adopt into their own business. And there's no more important time than right now to have a look at some simple stuff you can apply, so that we're talking about in the future back at COVID-19 and how we responded and how we became better for it. So with that confidence and etc., and I've mentioned a lot of time about looking internally, the first question I'll probably pose to you, and it's one we've spoken about before, is there a need to change?
Well, I think, when we talk about coming out of COVID, there's, basically 4 things to be aware of. The first thing is that question: is there a need to change? The second is focus. Third is mindset. Fourth is cause and effect. So, we'll talk about those. But dealing with the first one, change, right? Is there a need to change? So, obviously putting into practice the COVID safe workplace, conditions, that needs to happen. But, I think leaders need to be really mindful of all the mind chatter about, I've got to come up with the next transformational thing to do. I need to connect with the next big aha moment, when I think the question is really, have we done what we needed to do just to get through, the COVID-19 situation? Do we actually need to change anything? And if the answer is yes, well, what is that we need to change? What have I learned? What has made a difference? What's the process, policies, procedures that we can do differently? I just, would caution people to rush into wanting to make great big transformational changes when it may not be necessary, particularly if you've got had a strong business to start with. So, like for me, for instance, my business was strong when this started. So, I've had to do things through Zoom most of during this period.
Yeah.
Now, is that going to be what I do moving forward when I come out of this? Probably not. There might be some Zoom, but most of it's going face to face.
I think that one is a very simple but very apt example. Although your business might adopt a lot of that going forward, but I've had clients that would never adopt that before, or would never have thought about flexible work arrangements for staff, etc. They're now being forced into these different environments or different medium, and some of the conversations we've been having, they're going, what? This isn't that bad. Our productivity's actually gone up, or our cost of delivery of that service or pitch wasn't as difficult. We didn't have to send anyone there. We did it over technology. So there are some great that be adopted.
Yeah. Well, that's right. I mean, if I use myself as an example, I have a preference to doing face-to-face work, and the Zoom stuff has been, useful during this period. However, it's not going to be something that I adopt as a preference. It'll be useful to use it in different situations. So I've got to experience that. I've got to learn from that. I've got to experience what I liked and what I didn't like about that.
Yeah.
But you take a restaurant or a cafe, a cafe who's still trading is probably doing a lot of takeaway, probably only takeaway. Will they go back to just doing only takeaway? It's very unlikely.
Well, and it's funny, Bud, there are some people I've spoken to at my local cafe who, I like my coffee, so I've still been going along. They said they're actually making more money now, if that's what the driver is, but they're making more money now doing an abridged version and takeaway. I know they've garnered a lot of support out of this, but it does need to be looked at. I think your question that we've just been discussing is very on point around, is there a need to change? In some cases, no. In some cases, yes. But I think the point we both agree on is definitely needs to be considered.
Well, I think, I think the reflection is the piece. And this brings us, to another piece of it is, reflecting on it and then actually trusting your own, guidance and your own knowledge around it, and, getting the support from people like yourself who can, support people commercially with, okay, well, is that process a process that's going to be supportive? But it's certainly getting business owners to trust themselves, trust in what they know, and to adopt what they know. And, you know, you and I have had this discussion previously about, you know your process. And your process is the way you do business. Know it and trust your process. Don't deviate from your process, because I think it just goes pear-shaped when you deviate from your process.
So
If you know what works.
if you were practically trying to help someone, if you were coaching them through this, physically, what would you do to assess what needs to change and what doesn't?
Certainly question them and ask them, you know, how they do things, right? And, you know, get them to be aware of when they're doing it, what feels right. Like, you know, do they feel comfortable when they're doing something, you know, or do they feel, you know, anxious, fearful, frustrated, right? Look at the, look at the results they get from what they're doing. Like, it is the process that they're doing. Does it flow smoothly? If it doesn't flow smoothly, it's telling you that there's something amiss somewhere in that process, right? So, you know, it does take a bit of reflection, right? It takes, you've got to stop and you've got to look at it, reflect on what's actually you're feeling in yourself, but also look at the results. I have a really simple theory that if things flow and it feels smooth, it's actually right for you. When things feel like it's hard, it's a struggle, it feels like it has to be forced, there's something amiss that's not working. It might be a process that's not the right design for you, or you're not following it the way you need to, or there might be someone who is struggling with what they're doing. It's a very good practical, I think practical anyway, a way of just understanding whether something's right for you. It doesn't mean you don't do it. It means, okay, there's something we've got to stop and pay attention to here. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of points to add. You've mentioned a lot about process, you know, systems, you know, how you do things. A lot of that is tied also to your people, and I know you're passionate about this space. I don't want to take your thunder here, but I think when we talk about the people during a time of, you know, chaos or pressure that we've been through, you probably found some people that have really stood up, you know, really culture, really had your back, and then you found others that you might have thought went missing a bit. I think when it comes to people, it's the hardest thing because it's people, there's emotion. But reality is that comes under fire in the change process too, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You might have discovered that, you know, you need different people in different roles now, you know, the right people for the right role. I'm not sounding judgmental about that, but it's just the appropriate person for the appropriate role. And you may have discovered talents and strengths in this experience, right? You know, I guess crisis, for want of a better word, is going to bring out that stuff. Yeah. And again, it comes back to, you know, the leaders reflecting, looking at the business, looking at it as a whole, you know, and making an assessment on that, but not rushing into it. I think that's the thing I want to make. We don't have to, just because we're coming out of it, don't have to rush into going, okay, well, I've just got to completely turn my business upside down. Particularly if you've got, you know, a really strong business. The changes that may have occurred may have just needed to get through the COVID period, and that's it.
So I think what you're saying is if I summarise in my terms, it's first assess, yes, is change required in the different areas that you've mentioned. Secondly, this should be the impetus, if you like, to push change along, as opposed to trying to have all the changes complete, ready to go when the restrictions ease a bit.
I think that's really accurate, because you don't have to rush into this. I think that, and I've said this to you previously, you'll get a greater impetus from having the clarity of what needs to occur than anything else that you do.
Yeah.
You know? Which, you know, the question of whether we need to change leads on to the next issue, which is focus, right? So if we want to talk about that, and focus is simply this, is that the theory is pretty simple in this sense. You get what you focus on, so focus on what you want. So the question is, what do you want? You know, what do you want your business to look like? You know, what do you want to create in your business?
I think in my experience, a lot of people limit what they want based on what they've currently got.
Exactly. So, but what you've currently got is the place to start. So you look at what you currently got and go, okay, well, this is what it is. Or you look at what it was previous COVID and go, okay, is that how I want to keep doing it? Right? Are there parts of this that are really not working for me? Right? And if it's not, well, what do you want? Right? And, I really encourage people when they do this to look at it, have a mindset of going, okay, if I had no limitations, right, what would I want to create for myself? What do I want my business to look like? What do I want the people to look like? What type of clients do I want? What sort of income do I want to produce? What sort of profit do I want to produce? And it takes some reflection, right? But I think it's the key step, because from that reflection, and people may need to get some support to help them through this, is that you get the clarity, right? You get the clarity, and clarity equals simplicity. It gives you direction. And a really simple theory is this: truth equals clarity, clarity equals choice, choice equals creation or manifestation. So if you can connect with what your truth is about what you want to create, it gives the clarity. I work with a lot of leaders, and I've worked with you, and I spend a lot of time helping them get the clarity of what they want for themselves and what they want for the business. I think it's a real key.
That one, as you've said, a lot of people listen to that and go, "Oh yeah, sure, I can, pie in the sky." But it's not so much that. I think what I've found is you need to be true to what you want. Now more than ever, if you found things that you didn't enjoy before, you've got an opportunity. It's not saying it's going to be easy to achieve. It's not saying there might be, people or products or whatever it may be that might be collateral damage in this process. But if you've got what you want, it's a much easier process going forward to have the business that produces exactly what you're after.
Exactly. I think that's a great point, because, one of the things that has occurred, particularly in my dealings with business owners, CEOs, is that, there are times when people don't believe they can have what they want. Yeah. And probably what's a number of people have experienced in this COVID is that they've had to change the way they're doing business, and they're starting to see that, well, maybe I can actually do it a different way. Yeah. And a real key to manifesting what you want is that you'll manifest it really quickly if you actually tell your truth about what it is and you do what you want. Yeah. So a lot of us actually feel that we have to do business a certain way, or we have to be a CEO in a certain way, or we have to be the one that does all the work or do all the doing. Yeah. It's not the quickest way to. It works. You get somewhere, but it's not the quickest way to get the outcomes that you're after.
Yeah, and I think there's many people that in whether it be a business owner or just employees, whatever it may be, out of this have been, it's not a matter of do I change what I'm doing. It's a matter of they have to change what they're doing because they might have lost their job, or they might have lost a big contract or a big project. So we're not just dealing with a want and desire here. There's something that we'll have to think fast to actually get back on their feet.
Yeah, well, that's right. So then, what happens then is you go, okay, well, this is how it is, right? This is what has occurred. Yes. And, as we spoke last time about dealing with the fear and anxiousness around all that occurring. But, once you've done that, is go, okay, well, what do I want to do moving forward? What's my vision? Like, that's a common language that's used. So what will happen when you start to get clear about that, or even that process of asking yourself what I want to create, and you start to connect to that, it actually starts to build the confidence, right? It starts to move you towards being more confident, and actually starts to help you let go of the fear and the anxiousness and the doubt. And it creates hope, certainty, gratitude, and energy. Right, give you a sense of energy to move forward. Right, even though you haven't even created it, it's like, okay, I've got a direction now for myself. I've got something I can look at and work towards. And I think it's something that we probably need to check in with ourselves quite regularly with. Every 6 months, once a year, that sort of thing. But it's certainly important now that we're coming out of the COVID, the COVID-19 restrictions.
Yeah, I think it's a great one, and I mean, I know I've found this trap in previous years around thinking that you can't change things because you may have put it in place in the first instance, but
Yeah.
it is following your sword a bit and saying, well, things don't always work out, and it's not a mistake; it's just a learning experience too. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um, it is.
Well, the benefit, just on that, that's a good point, because the benefit of looking at it now is that if you take what you've learned, you can then apply it to what you want to do now. So, we all learn stuff, and we would have learned a lot. There's many of us learned a lot through this COVID-19 experience.
Yeah.
You look at what you knew before and what you've learned now, and then reassess and reflect. But just take your time doing it.
Well, I think, again, in many occasions, you're going to have to, because the people that is your market might be making change for you. So if you keep doing the same thing and expect the same result when things are changing around you, you won't get it.
That's right. That's right. But, I've said to people that, like, think of it like a magnet. When you connect with what's true for you and what you really want to do, you start pulling things towards you like a magnet. Now, that doesn't mean there's things you don't do. There's certainly action steps that you need to take. But it's like, okay, now that I'm clear about what I want to create for myself, right? The next step is, what needs to happen for me to create this, right? What are the steps that I need to take to create this?
You break it
Right?
down to bite-sized chunks.
Break it down in chunks and bites, and then what happens out of that will naturally give you a pathway, right? It gives you a pathway and a time frame for that. So, ask yourself the question, what do I want? Reflect on that. What do I want to create? Once you get some clarity around that, go, okay, what needs to happen for that to occur? What are the steps that need to happen for that to occur? What step needs to happen before the next step, before the next step, before the next step?
And I think that's key too, because as you said, some of them mightn't be, that bigger steps and can happen, mightn't be costly or anything, can happen quite quickly, where others mightn't take weeks, they might take years.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is, if you look at it that way, if you have this vision, and whether you think it's a big vision or not, and you say, well, that's somewhere down the track, that might 12 months, 6 months, 2 years away. If you then break it down and go, okay, what's the steps that need to happen for that to occur, right? It starts to make it simple, and it moves the overwhelm away. It moves you out of the overwhelm for the bigger goal, because you just go, okay, if I do with this piece now, that's all I need to focus on, because this piece will lead to the next piece that leads to the next piece.
Yeah.
I know that sounds very generalized, and I'm talking very generally, but from an energetic point of view, it just helps you move very quickly.
No, I think whilst we're talking in layman's, I agree, but really at the end of the day, you're saying, look, first assess change in those areas and whether it's required. Second, really, and I'm summarising this, but where do you want to be? What do you want your business to look like? What do you want your life to look like, I guess, off the business? Compare that to where you are now and break it down to chunks, knowing that it's not a race, it's got to be achievable. So get yourself focused and radar locked, if you like, that you can then start to work towards. So moving on to your next step, you said about mindset. What do you mean by mindset in this context?
Well, I think mindset is absolutely critical and fundamental, because if you think about it, you're creating a vision, you're making choices about what you want, but what is your mindset when you do that?
Yeah.
Like, if you're in a mindset that, I'm doing this because there's not enough, I'm actually not worthy and I need to do this to prove myself, or I'm really, my mindset is, I've just got to do what everyone else says I need to do. Like, the mindset affects the outcome of the choice or the vision or the goal, right? So, the theory is simply this: you choose from a place of not enoughness, you create not enoughness, right? And if you're doing, for instance, things because you think you need to prove something, or you're doing it because other people think you need to be doing it, you're actually not going to create what it is that you're saying, and it's not your truth anyway.
Yeah.
So, I think that mindset has a bigger part to play than actually getting clear about the choice. So what that looks like for me practically, when I make a choice about something, I want my mindset to be, what, I'm worthy. I'm worthy of this. I can handle whatever comes my way. I'm going to tell my truth about, what I want for myself. I can create what I want. So statements like that, I'd be saying to myself, and you might recall in the last, webinar, we spoke about how, I'm the one who's can choose how to respond. I'm the one that interprets things. I'm the one that controls my thought patterns. So how you want to see the world is completely your choice. So, in that sense, what I would be saying to people is, you've got to check in with your mindset. What's your mindset? What are your thought patterns? And the question why you want to create what you're doing, that will actually throw up for you what your mindset is.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so you don't have to have a great deal list of long affirmations. It's just going, okay, well, how do I want to look at this? Am I going to do this because it's what I want and I believe that I can create it? If you don't believe you can create it, you won't create it. Right?
Yeah, and I think it's a good point. And you've worked with me for a while, Rich, now, and it's fair to say you probably agree them a bit black and white. I like things probably a bit proven. I know when we started talking about some of this stuff years ago, I needed to believe it myself. And I found a good article from the Harvard Business Review, and it was all about success versus that abundance mentality, and how many people think, oh, if I get this, I'll be successful, or if something looks a certain way, I'll be successful. Where the whole theory, and they've proven it scientifically, to take away from some of our listeners or viewers that might be where I was and thinking this is a bit fluff, but they've proven it from a point of view that no, if you first choose that you are successful, the rest follows. So I think, is that what you're talking about?
Oh, that's really fundamental. It's not I'll get something and that will prove that I'm worthy. That's not how you create stuff. It's you accept that you're worthy, from which you will create whatever you want to create, right? And it's all the principles we're talking about really tie into each other, because mate, if you don't believe you can create it, you won't create it, and you're right? If you don't trust yourself to get clear about your truth, you won't actually create what your truth is, right? So it's being I think mindset just has a really fundamental part, and you get to choose your mindset. Despite what it might feel like, what it might look like, you get to choose it. Sometimes you might find it challenging to change your mindset. I accept that, but success, if we want to use that word, comes from your mindset, which then, see, if you go, I tell my truth, I'm going to tell my truth about what I want, that will lead you to creating what it is that you want. That leads to, it sits behind asking that question, what do I want? Yeah,
so it may not be success, but it depends what you define success, but it may be exactly what you said about, once you've decided what that focus is, what you're going for, putting yourself to first believe you can get there and you can deal with the challenge that will present.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
All right, and finally, I guess linking to that, your final point you had was cause and effect. So, I mean, sounds a bit self-explanatory, but maybe put in your words.
Yes, it's a term, I guess, but let's give it a simplistic meaning. It's simply this: you get back what you give out, right? So, mindset and cause and effect go together. So it really is simply that: you get back what you give out. So if you go into a meeting with your client and you're positive, you get positivity back. You trust yourself, what you'll start to experience, well, people will trust you. If you have confidence in yourself, well, then people around you will be confident in you. If you lead in your role, other people will be accept your leadership. Yeah. It's a really, strange phenomenon, but it's just about cause and effect. You just get back what you give out. So that's why mindset becomes important, because, if you're in a place where, you think there's an abundance of clients and there's abundance of, support, abundance of, money, well, then you're going to experience that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you don't do things, but it does help in the attraction process. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I reiterate a lot of this stuff. And I know you talk about it's easy to talk about, but people need to give it a go and put it into practice and see the results that come along. It won't be for everyone, but I agree with you. It's a great way to start to assess your business and what it could be or what you want it to be.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a really simple example around what I just said about you get back what you give out. So you go in and have a meeting with a client and you've got doubts about whether the client, is going to like what you're offering or what you're advising, right? The client's going to reflect back that doubt to you. They might question you. They might not like what you say. You might experience exactly what your mindset was when you walked into the room. So, that's basically how it works. I mean, there's a lot of theory behind why it works that way, and we don't need to go into that today. It's simply, I think most people that at least that I've come across understand you get back what you give out. Like you are aggressive with somebody, you're going to get aggression back.
Yeah.
Like that makes sense. It works in the same way for many other business things, or not business things, but relationship things.
I was going to say it's big with people, and if you're an employer and you've got a good team that you're trying to help get you to achieve things, well, if you come in and you kick the cat and you're down on your luck and the rest of it, how do you expect your team are going to respond?
Yeah, that's right. So, and I think from those two things, like mindset and cause and effect, or you get back what you give out, are really important pieces for leaders. Right? From a leadership position, like it would be one of the things that I would encourage a leader to really get their head around, is that you get back what you give out. If you want to create a certain culture in your business, a certain type of business, then you need to be right what you want to that business to be like. You need to show up that way.
Yeah, and that's it. I think for many of us, it's just about looking in the mirror first of all, and accepting something that is being said, and how can I apply it. But I mean, just in the interest of time, mate, we'll try and recap some of this stuff. There's been a lot said, but put simply, it's time now for business owners, well, everyone for that matter, but business owners that we're really talking to think about their business. What is the new norm? That there will be changes in the market, there will be change in your client base or your customer base. How are you responding? And I think the first point you're saying is to stop, look at your business to determine in all the different areas, does anything need to change? If it does, why, what? And you linked a lot to, is the process smooth? Does it feel right, etc.? I mean, I am summarising. You said about focus, getting absolute clear now that you've got the opportunity, what you want your business to look like, when you want your business to look like it. Some of it might be a lot longer. You said there's no rush. Take the time to instigate change and maybe a new direction, as opposed to trying to rush it through. Mindset, you mentioned a lot about, you need to make sure that you believe you can do it. You need to make sure that you are worthy and it can be achieved. Otherwise, if you don't believe you can, it never will be. You said a lot more, Rich, but I'll summarise it.
Well, that's the perfect summary, right? So really, we put it into four steps. It's reflect, focus, mindset, check in with your mindset, and cause and effect, or you get back what you give out.
Yeah, and I think I won't summarise anymore. I think you said you get back what you get back what you give out. I think it's a perfect summary of that. So, I'd encourage all business owners who are doing this to write some notes down. Don't just think about it. Actually get in. Whether even better, get some butcher's paper, a whiteboard, whatever. It's the time now you can really look at things. And if you're so bold, get people around you that are close to you, whether it be your team, your advisor, etc., to help you with this process. Because the more the merrier when it comes to trying to achieve something from a business point of view, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, just to add to that, just on that last point, to be a bit more complete. It's great just to have a brainstorming session where you get into the room. You mentioned the butcher's paper. Get in the room, maybe have some of your colleagues, and just brainstorm without any attachment to what it actually looks like or whether you're going to do it or not do these things. And what happens is so much clarity comes out of that type of process.
Yeah, the final point I'd say on that is, and I know we've done it, when you look at that, when you think about what change you can make and what you potentially want to do, it may take a few iterations where you realise, okay, I need to tweak that. There might be, if we just went, hell for leather at some of these points, we might have too much collateral damage. There might be big costs. There might be fallout. So it doesn't, that brainstorming and that focus one in particular, or considering change, it's more about getting it all out. You know, as you said, talking your whole truth, and then from there it can be refined. But you know, now's the perfect time for business owners to look at this kind of stuff, and I encourage them to get into it. Just have a crack. If they did require help, and I missed this last video, so I apologise, Rich, but you can be reached at richard@richardford.com.au. I'm sure you're willing to have a chat to people. But thanks for joining us again, mate. Hopefully people get a lot out of that. And to all the viewers, just again, thanks for joining us for Down to Business. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone.